Shalom and Hotep family. This is Brother Prodigy. Today's date is February 22nd, 2014. And I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm just intending that this installment is going to come out like I'm intending it to. And the title of this entry is DNA, how it relates to melanin, how melanin relates to the matrix that we find ourselves in. Okay? And within this installment, as I said, I'm going to be talking about melanin. I'm going to be talking about DNA, how our DNA really enslaves us, how our DNA really manipulates us into seeing and accepting what we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell at face value, okay? In which we shouldn't. So I'm going to be dealing with all those issues, and I'm not really gonna bang or harbor on the white man, because I really want this installment to be uploaded to YouTube. So the only reason why I'm even addressing him is because he exists in our current dispensation. You know, when speaking of previous matrices and dispensations, he wasn't even an issue because he wasn't even in existence. So the reason why I'm mentioning him is simply because he does exist and he is manifested into our reality in this current dispensation. But in another dispensation beyond this, I won't even be discussing him, because he won't even be an issue. He would just be a distant memory. And I hope YouTube doesn't even disqualify this installment just because of what I just said. But I mean, it's really the truth. It really is the truth. I mean, we are the indigenous peoples to this dimensional realm, and we really aren't being treated with really the respect that I feel we deserve. And I know a lot of the ignorance is self-perpetuated, and a lot of the issues that we currently face are self-inflicted due to our ignorance. But nonetheless, let's really get into it. Okay? Now, like I said, this installment is really going to be dealing with DNA, okay? Which, for those of you that really aren't familiar with, I mean, for those of you listening, you're pretty much abreast to DNA, which stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, okay? And it's a molecule that encodes essentially genetic instructions used in the development and functioning of all known living organisms, including many viruses, okay? It's a nucleic acid, if you will. And because of it being a molecule that encodes or programs genetic instructions, it is a biological information storehouse. DNA is a biological information storehouse. And what we're actually dealing with are double-stranded helixes, okay? Now, when we hear of junk DNA simply refers to the more than 98% of DNA molecules that are non-encoding, okay? So the term junk DNA really had its origin, its genesis, in and around the 60s, okay? The 1960s. And junk DNA is really like a slang term to really describe or label molecules that are non-encoding, all right? Meaning they do not encode proteins, okay? Molecules that do not encode proteins. Now, within DNA, you have units that repeat in various sequences. These are called nucleotides, okay? These are called nucleotides. And the structure of DNA within all species is really made up of two helical chains or strands, all right? These are what we see, all right? Now, when you look at the dueling serpent, which is what it is, you see that there are planks that really run horizontally to the strands of DNA. These are called your nucleobases, okay? That they're what gives the DNA strand an appearance of a staircase, all right? These are called your nucleobases, all right? Now, there are two general classifications of nucleobases. However, only one nucleobase from each strand, so proceeding from each strand, all right, from each helix is a nucleobase. And that nucleobase from each strand binds to another nucleobase on the other DNA helix, all right? And these are called base pairs. So basically you have a twin strand DNA, okay? A double helix, all right? On each helix, which are the ones that curl, you have a nucleobase, all right, on each one. And these nucleobases join, and as they joined, they are called or referred to as a nucleobase, which are rungs in a ladder, if you will, okay? And these are called base pairs. Now, this is where the encoding of the matrix comes in. This is where the encoding of the matrix comes in. The double helix DNA molecule is what keeps us, and this is really important, the double helix DNA molecule is what keeps us in lockdown, because it's what encodes our matrix. It is what encodes our matrix, meaning the limits of what we can see, taste, hear, smell, and touch are being held in place by the encoding of DNA molecules. Now, let's take for an example what we can see, because mainly what we can see, we use that as a determining factor to really substantiate our interpretation of what is real. And it must be properly understood that light is energy in the form of photons, okay, that have a dual nature to them, all right? And really, these photons exist at the speed of light. So at the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles per second, 300,000 kilometers per second, at the speed of light is the point at which photons exist, okay? And the photons are that which we readily identify, okay? Now, these photons have a dual nature to them, meaning in their natural state, they travel in wave formations, okay? Like waves in an ocean. However, quantum mechanics tells us that upon observation and data collection of the flow of these photons, where we get the words like photograph, photography, photosynthesis, etc. Quantum mechanics tells us that upon observation and data collection of a conscious observer, the flow of these photons is collapsed into particle formations, and these particle formations are what gives us the semblance of reality. All right? Now, let me really break that down. Okay? Like I said, photons travel similar to waves in an ocean, but they change properties once we, consciousness, interpret them. This proves that essentially reality is thus shaped by consciousness, or the conscious observer. Now, let's get even deeper. We as consciousness or conscious observers are within a matrix of a sea of potentialities and probability, meaning what could happen exists within this matrix as potential. So anything that could happen exists, okay? And that is within this matrix existing as potential, all right? But when we as consciousness focus upon that which can potentially happen, we have the ability to manifest it into reality. Now, getting back to DNA, our ability to manifest things into reality is directly proportionate to the encoding of our DNA. Let me say that again. Our ability to manifest things into reality is directly proportionate to the encoding of our DNA and the limitations thereof. All right? It's our DNA, the two strands that limit us. It's our DNA that prevents us from tapping into multidimensional informational storehouses. Now, microbiologists will even admit that within junk DNA, quote unquote, or non-coding DNA, rather, there is potential to transcribe and translate information. So within this so-called junk DNA, there is potential to transcribe, okay, and translate information. The question is, translating information from where? And transcribing information from what source? And the answer to that is higher dimensional planes. So within this non-coding or junk DNA, there is the potential to tap into higher dimensional planes, and not just that, but to translate the information, to receive information, as well as to transcribe information as well. Now, our bodies, these vehicles of imprisonment for our souls, because that's what they are, vehicles of imprisonment for our souls, are what translate our reality to us. Our bodies are what translate reality to us, only allowing us to shape reality at basic levels. So because of the flesh, we only have the ability to shape reality at a basic level, even given the enormous potential that's out there, the enormous probability, the immense probabilities that are out there. Okay, your ability to see is what shapes your reality at a basic level. Your ability or sensitivity to hear things is what shapes your reality at a basic level. Your sensitivity to touch shapes your reality at a basic level, and these are all governed by the brain. These are all governed by the brain. Okay? The brain is what controls or modulates the sensitivity that is interpreted through your five senses. And if brain damage would occur, that would limit your interpretation of reality, thus altering your perspective of reality. When you look at the Bible, it says that God is not the author of confusion, right? I mean, any of us that have done any significant study of the Bible knows the verse that says God is not the author of confusion, but of peace and order, etc., etc. But in Genesis chapter 11, when the people were ascending and manifesting into reality all that they willed, the gods, plural, confused their language. Okay? They confused their language. So this verse is a blatant contradiction of the previous verse when saying God is not the author of confusion, because he is the author of confusion. All right? And this is witness alone that the gods, plural, the Elohim that created us, were malevolent deities, were evil and wicked deities, okay, that created the flesh. I'm speaking specifically to, all right? Your interpretation of your three-dimensional reality is contingent upon your genetic makeup, all right? And this interpretation is purely subjective, because from person to person, each person has a different interpretation of reality, all right? Some people say that certain things that happen are real and they are justifiable, but others say that no, it's fiction. It doesn't really exist. Okay, so our reality is holographic because it's really constructed by chains and sequences of information. Everything that we experience as being real is constructed by chains and sequences of information, all right, data. Your brain is what organizes the data and helps formulate your reality for you, okay? If we were to have 12 strands of coding DNA, this matrix would not exist subjectively nor objectively. However, 12-strand DNA activation will not happen on this earthly plane because the deities in control would lose control. Alright? They would lose control once that occurred, or very shortly thereafter. Also, look at this. It's the DNA that creates the assumption that this illusionary domain is real. It's your DNA that generates the lower mind and personality traits, okay? Ego, etc. It's the DNA that helps create your avatar. Now, your avatar is simply, and let me discuss what I mean by avatar. Your avatar is simply that which your consciousness interprets reality through, alright? Which is the body. The body is the avatar, or your avatar. It's through this avatar that we connect to this plane. However, it's this avatar which is also a dominating evil presence on this physical plane in varying degrees due to its programming, tendencies, proclivities, etc. The devil is the unrestricted totality of the flesh, minus any external intervention from higher, more benevolent beings and realms, okay? The fleshly body does not get its civility from the flesh. It gets it from higher dimensional beings that incarnate in order to wake us up to our true divinity that fell into these foreign states of being, okay? And to help us eliminate ignorance in which otherwise we would be slaves through, or by way of, okay? It is through the serpent that we receive illumination and reconnect with our higher mind, okay? Or the divine collective, all right? When you look at the mythical Garden of Eden, you see that life was in a perpetual state of stagnation, okay? Doing the same thing over and over and over again, okay, with the constant and persistent fear of death as a consequence for misbehavior, alright? Eden was a metaphor for a matrix that the creators invented to keep us in prison through ignorance within matter, alright? When the forbidden fruit was partaken of, the third eye was opened, okay? We realized that we were naked, meaning we realized that we had been stripped of our divinity, and we finally found a way to beat the simulation that we had been trapped in. Once we found a solution, and due to an awakened consciousness, the reign of the Archons, which by Archons I'm qualifying those entities that really had enough knowledge to really create an environment in which to enslave the souls of the divine, alright? So, once we found a solution, and due to an awakened consciousness, the reign of the Archons was threatened, and the matrix was restructured and reset. You can also cite Genesis chapter 3, verse 22. About what happened and shortly after how, well, not how, but why it was systematically reset. Now, this has been the case for aeons, okay? Whenever consciousness was massively awakened, a resetting of the matrix occurred and the process started over. Like what the architect said to Neo in the second Matrix movie, alright? Who, in the movie, he was a type of chief archon, okay? Now, DNA is the basis for our forced compliance, okay? Certain things that we do seem automatic, seem reflexive. This is because of the fact that the body is coded. Okay, our genes are coded, so there's certain things that we just can't escape. So it's like this. Whenever the consciousness of a people was near to threatening the entire system, either a flood took place, an asteroid collision occurred, massive famine occurred, ice ages, etc., in order to reset the system itself. Then our DNA was redesigned to force us, through genetics, to comply with the new laws or the laws of the newly created matrix simulation, and to develop a natural equilibrium with the newly created matrix. So our experiences can seem to be natural, forgetting what previous human prototypes were like. So whenever our consciousness was at a high level or was ascending, okay, the gods, just like in the Tower of Babel story, descended and confused us and reset it. Okay, and by resetting it, our DNA was also redesigned to force us through genetics and reprogrammed the physical body. Okay, and these bodies were passed down through sexual unions, etc., etc. The genetics just kept being passed down, kept being passed down, kept being passed down. So we were really kept in the dark. Whenever we were close to finding a way, we were just knocked backwards. Okay, which you can see what happened, or you can see like a metaphor in the Tower of Babel story. Whenever we were on one accord and really were in the process of ascending, they would come down, knock us back, and confuse us, okay, and leave us in the dark. And then this process was perpetual. It would start and it would keep going for eons, okay. Now, the Archons are using the white man to help guide humanity into a new world order, which in fact isn't new at all. The implementation of a new world order had its genesis long ago. Okay, it was just that the Archons are using the white man to bring about their plans currently. But the white man is he's either too scared or too stupid to even know that he's being used. Okay, most of all, more than anyone. Okay, because we as a people, we might think that we are the victims of exploitation, but if you really think about it, he's more of a victim than we are, because the Archons are exploiting him directly. Okay, directly, in order to institute this thing. Okay, when consciousness does increase, this matrix will be reset and he will be eliminated as well. Okay, the ones in the know probably know this stuff. They probably know that they're being exploited, okay, which is why they are just living and creating a global society that rapes other people, groups, and nature, because they know that their time is approaching, or the end is approaching. So they build societies and invent and create laws that are conducive to that mind frame. Now, this is why they monitor us, the Moorish Americans, with tremendous scrutiny, because we are the closest to crashing this system, okay, due to the near completion of our alchemical process, all right? So something does have to change. Something will change, all right? And ironically enough, the Archons cannot completely annihilate us due to our divine roots and connection to the divine collective consciousness, which has an unlimited supply of energy on tap. So with every reset and recoding of our DNA, or of the DNA, the Archons have to code our DNA, the DNA that codes to this prison body. They have to code our DNA around our essential divine nature, in which the connection to this God of the perfect black is melanin. So as they reset the matrices, when it comes to our DNA, it has to be coated around melanin, and this is why many people don't understand melanin, or that dark particle, because it's so ancient and it's lasted through so many matrices that it's really hard to map. Okay, and this is a chemical. Speaking of melanin, it's a chemical that dates back to the beginning of melanin dates back to the beginning of simulation. Okay, not just civilization, because civilization is constantly, persistently being reset. Okay, it dates back to the beginning of the simulation. Okay, that's why it's so hard to find the origin of it, because it's lasted through various resets of the matrix. Okay, and the Archons, in a way, are superior, but in a way they're not. They know that they cannot usurp our divine birthright forever. However, they try to. And the white man doesn't have this essential link to the divine, so his being can be completely restructured and manipulated, which is why his God is the God of this world. Okay, his God is the God of this world, and if he doesn't comply, then a literal hell can and probably will be constructed, which would be simply another matrix, okay, for him to be cast into. So for the white man, there is a literal hell. This is also the reason why he is forced and compelled to submit to the rulers of this world, because quite simply it's in his genetics. This present construct is designed to extract our energy while simultaneously keeping us in a perpetual state of complacency through genetic modification and subliminal programming. And one of the reasons why you won't see a system reset now is because this current matrix is the most optimal blueprint that one can design in order to extract the most amount of energy with the least amount of input. Furthermore, the battle that's being waged in the heavens currently would be over if the Archons did reset, because they would have to start from scratch. And then there's going to be a period in which they would harvest little to no energy and essentially starve. So because of the battle in the heavens that's getting so intense, there can't be another reset, because a reset will equal the demise of the Archons. Because as it is above, so it is below. And since there is a spiritual breakdown in dimensions, it's slowly trickling down to our, well, I can't really say slowly, because it seems like it's happening at an extreme pace, but it's trickling down to our reality through the manifestation of economic turbulence, bankers committing suicide, nations getting away from the dollar, increases in racial hate crimes, etc. Okay, these are all evidence of a hierarchical collapse. All right. Now, the good news is that the guys that keep creating consecutive matrices are self-destructing due to a lack of energy needed to expand the system. All right, and what people don't really take into consideration is the fact that in order for the Archons to be cut off from energy, we must be cut off to a certain extent from energy, because they've gotten to a point to where they're so efficient in stealing energy. The more energy that we have, the more energy that they can use to keep the system afloat. So in order for us to be liberated, we must out of necessity go through hell. All right, which is low energy, low vibratory states, similar to the mystical story of Jesus in the Bible, when he was being executed for a crime he didn't commit. In order for Satan, quote unquote, to have been defeated, the Christ had to be cut off from the Father. That's why he cried out to the Father, "Why have you forsaken me?" All right. So, quite simply, in conclusion, just know that the good news is that we're being liberated. It's just that we have to persevere during these times, and it takes time to trickle down. It really takes time to trickle down. But the good news is that when in relation to reincarnation, it is opening up, and a lot of our ancestors aren't returning. So right now, the ones that are coming into this plane of existence are the ancients. Okay, that are the ancients that are really coming down to really help us out and guide us in the final process of redemption and resurrection. So, with that being said, just look at it from an optimistic perspective or in an optimistic light, because we are ultimately on the side of the winners. Not to seem superficial, but we're really on the side of righteousness, and it is going to work itself out, because it has to. All right, that's evolution. Okay, it just takes time, and it's hard, and sometimes it doesn't seem like it's fun, but just know that we do have those that are on our side, that are fighting for us, that are watching us and listening to us, and we are not alone. And the people that are really truly standing up and not selling out are really being watched and congratulated. So with that being said, once again, my name is Brother Prodigy. Today is February 22nd, 2014, and I would just like to say Shalom and Hotep.